So I just got done reviewing the Vizio P Series Quantum X, and there are a few settings that I think you should change to make the picture the best it can be. Stick around. Hey guys, it's the Villaman here, and on this channel we review and compare the audio and video tech that entertains you, like TVs like this. So if you're new here, then definitely hit the subscribe button and come along for the ride. Now let's get straight into the picture settings because I think there are a few that definitely should be changed. Now to those settings. So first thing we want to do, press the menu button and go up to picture. Now there are several picture modes available, and calibrated and calibrated dark are the most accurate picture modes. So you have vivid, which is just the colors are more punchy. It's designed to wow people, so if you see a TV in a showroom, that's what they likely have it on, vivid. There is game for game mode. You can see some flickering right now, and computer for computers, and standard. So we'll be concentrating on the calibrated mode and game mode. So if you like a particular setting, you can always use it and apply it to another picture mode, but this is where we will cover right now. So again, after we finish with this, we'll look at the game mode to make that one, better essentially. So first things first, backlight. Now this will adjust the brightness of the TV. So if you want to adjust the actual brightness of the TV, say in a bright room, don't use the actual brightness slider because this will affect how shadows and highlights are represented. So what you actually should use is the backlight slider, and this will make the TV get brighter without affecting the contrast too much. So that is what you should use. So in this case, it's at 50 and we can leave it at that. Depending on your room, you might want to have it higher or lower, depending on your personal preference, of course. So contrast, as you know, this affects the contrast. So if you increase it, the color or the picture will become more contrasty. But I don't think you should change any of these two settings right now because there are better ways to achieve a better overall look than to change those. So color, that can remain at 50% because in normal HDR mode, I think the color is very good. And because this is also the calibrated mode, then you don't want to mess with the color because this is more in line with what the content creators intended, essentially, versus increasing the color and making it skewed to making the picture more saturated. So tint also affects the different color tints. So there's red and green. So one way to the left is red, to the right is green. You don't need to mess with that. Sharpness for HDR sources, you don't actually need to enable sharpness. So for if you have a particular mode you want to use with SDR sources, then you can use the sharpness slider in that to actually enhance the edge sharpness of SDR sources and lower quality sources like cable TV, for example. But HDR or full HD 1080p content looks great on this TV, so you don't actually necessarily need to alter the sharpness. So where we are going to go is into more picture. So first, the color temperature. This you can change to your personal preference. Now, warm color temperature is better for low light viewing. So normal or computer are the warmer settings. So normal is actually the warmest. Cool is something that you'd use in a more brightly lit room, for example. So for now, let's leave the color temperature at normal. Black detail. Now this actually affects how blacks are represented on the TV, and the TV I think has a pretty high black point at this point by the default image. So if you actually increase that to high, then the shadows will have more detail, but they'll be less pronounced. So everything will look kind of samey, and I don't actually like that setting, so I actually leave it off. Now, full active full array, this is the backlight control, and what you want to do is enable this to high. Now, the active full array has the effect of actually increasing the contrast once you enable this to high. So I think that's where you need to increase it if you want to adjust the contrast, because this affects how the TV utilizes its 480 in the 75-inch and 384 backlight zones in the 65-inch. So you want to have that remain at high. For motion control, this, if you have a problem with judder, and I haven't had a problem with judder, so you can increase the reduce judder setting, but the TV has pretty good judder control, so you don't actually need to enable that unless you find instances like for lower quality sources, for example, where you see judder appearing, then that you can increase to reduce that. And that's why I said it's probably a good idea to have a picture setting for your SDR sources. So proceed accordingly. And of course, reduce motion blur. Now for sports, this is one of those settings you can use, but at the same time, if you use it for movies, which I do not recommend whatsoever, if you use this in clear action, then clear action will enable black frame insertion, and the reduced motion blur will enable basically the soap opera effect, which I find horrible, but some people like it. I hope you don't like it, but it's fine if you do, kinda. Now, reduce noise, this is for SDR sources, lower quality sources. This does not need to be enabled on 4K or HDR sources, because that's basically all that is doing is just altering the picture, softening it basically. So you don't necessarily need this to be enabled to enjoy the picture if you have a 4K source. So now you can also have this mode, you can have any picture mode for that matter, be a game mode. So by enabling game low latency. But it's also better, I think, to have or to use the actual game mode, because then you can make changes that are specific to games. Film mode I leave on because it doesn't hurt. And gamma, because the TV has such a high black point, I actually increase the gamma to 2.4. So you can see that right now at 2.1 there is some contrast, but the more you increase it, the more contrasty the image gets. So as I said, this is actually a better way of enabling or increasing contrast versus just using the slider, because this gamma setting basically affects how the TV interprets black information. So the more or the higher the gamma setting is, the blacker the blacks will be essentially. And enhanced viewing angle, now this increases the viewing angle of the TV, but I think, or I've seen in practice where it doesn't really change it that much, and all it does is basically reduces the, or not reduces, but changes the contrast, just shifts it around essentially. I've put it on and I didn't see a big increase in the viewing angles, so your mileage may vary. So again, these are the settings that you use for your 4K sources to make it look even better than it does out of the box. Now, as I said, for SDR sources, you can make those changes that I suggested while going through them, because the options won't change. It will just be a matter of your personal preference. So if you like a sharper picture, you know what setting to change now. If you like a smoother image, you also know what image or what setting to change. So proceed how you may. Alright, so this is how it looks in game mode, and as you can see, if you had turned on this TV and saw this picture when you tried to play a game, then I'm sure you would not be very happy. So what we can do is, first of all, the settings remain the same from what I told you in movie mode. So the first changes we have to make is to the color. Now in game mode, the color is a bit muted, and it's pretty washed out actually, especially compared to other TVs that I've seen. So I found that 65 is a great place to actually increase it to. So we can see already where the color just has more vibrancy to it. So that is one change we should make. And then in the color temperature, now I've told you before that this actually depends on personal preference. I've preferred a warmer image, and if you use normal or computer, it will be on the warmer side, but normal is a bit warmer than computer, so I'll have it remain at computer for now. It can be whatever you want, it's just personal preference, but that's where I'll keep this one. Now, black detail, this will remain off, because if we enable it, then the shadows will be raised, or the black points will be raised, just to show you more detail in the shadows, which I think this TV already has a lot of detail in the shadows. And for active full array, we bring that to high, because then we actually have the backlight or the local dimming zones working at their best. And then the other biggest change that we need to make to game mode is actually motion control. Now, for some reason, black frame insertion is on by default on this TV, and what you want to do is turn it off. Now, you see that as soon as you do that, the flickering has stopped. So that is what needs to happen. So you can increase the gamma also. You can see that as we increase it, then the picture gets more contrasty. But I think for game mode, let's leave it at 2.2 because we don't want to make it too dark, right? And then we go back out, and there is nothing else that needs to be done. Once you make those changes, you will be good to go. If you need to make it brighter for your particular room, then you can increase the backlight to your desired level. But after that, you're all set. Look at that. That is much better. So those are the settings. I hope you get some really good use out of it and enjoy your new TV. Hit that like button if you found the video useful, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and until next time, this has been your friendly neighborhood Villaman saying peace.